So thank you. The topic today, obviously, we're kicking off the external manufacturing track, and I think from a TraceLink perspective, I think it was Dan and I and a few others, long time ago, went and somebody said, hey, at some point you're going to have to start exchanging serial numbers with contract packagers. So go figure that out. That was back in 2010 or so, and we said, well, how do you all exchange information today? And the answer we got was, well, it's spreadsheets and fax and CDs, or for batch records, were FedExed and things like that. So we obviously saw the problem there a long time ago, and fast forward to 2025, it still exists in huge swaths of manual, tedious activity going on. So I'm happy to have Jeff up here, and I think from a bit about your background, maybe Jeff, because you've seen it from both sides. Jeff was obviously at Sandoz now, but he was at Sandoz before, and from what I understand, did a stint at a CDMO in between.
Yes.
So
yes. So first, thank you, John and TraceLink, for having me here. Feel honored and privileged to be able to have some time. Myself, again, Jeff Borden. I've been at Sandoz. I'm the head of North America supply chain. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for about 20 years-ish. Worked through distribution, planning, master data, and as you were mentioning, I spent some time at Sandoz in planning, and then I left Sandoz and went to a CDMO where I was under private equity and was able to start the S&OP process, ended up running global supply chain, and now back at Sandoz. And it was funny, you were just mentioning back in the day, I remember my first day at McKesson when I worked there, printing out the AS400, those green and white sheets that you go like that, and faxing them to the site so they could see their inventory levels. So yeah, right. That actually was a thing, shockingly. That's all. Yeah. Maybe dating myself, but yeah.
I hope they were kidding. We had a conversation last week with a customer that said, we asked how would you increase productivity, and they said get a second fax machine. So I hope they were joking about that. So when we had a prep call last week, and you mentioned some themes on things like transparency, visibility, partnership, and all that. So how do you see the relationship between a CDMO and a brand manufacturer like yourself? How has it evolved? How does it need to evolve? What could be improved?
Yeah, so when you think about it's probably the most important thing that we do is interact with our, I'll call them colleagues, or it really turns into transactional, right? That's how things start. Here's our contract. We want this. Give it to us then. We're going to try to do our best to get our terms. You're going to try to get your terms, and usually that's how it starts, or at least that's how I perceive it to start. Instead of becoming what it should be as a partnership and working together, it seems to, for me, and one of the things that I have experienced on both sides of it is, especially some of the CDMOs that are out there now, a lot of them are under private equity. And what's a private equity's job is to make money, right? And sometimes you feel that right away, and that creates, I'll say, that transactional feel. And when something's transactional, it becomes just that, commodity, like, one of those types of things. And I think that's something that we really need to get away from and really start to become partners and understand each other and not be afraid to share information. That's one of the things that I always say, oh, you can't say that, or that's confidential, or run it by legal first, or we have some things. Those types of things back things away. How do we become more trusting and understand that we're in it together, and that if we work together and we share information, we'll both win. And that's something that I think gets lost a lot. And I'd like to, from my perspective, it's one of what we're trying to do is, again, build that relationship, and relationships built on trust. And how do you build trust? You have to get there. Myself, my level of trust starts at the top and ends at the bottom. But a lot of people don't work that same way, where it's, you have to prove yourself, you have to deliver on time, you have to do all these things. So it's a unique situation that I think a lot of organizations struggle with, because you have some private equities involved that are trying, again, their bottom line is the top. Then you have bigger companies who are, again, worried about these types of things. And in the middle, you have supply chain who, my job is to bring product in and make sure it gets out to the patients and customers who need it. And there's a lot in between that, of course.
So without, I don't want to stray into anything proprietary or confidential to Sandoz, but at a high level, what does your CDMO network look like?
Sandoz is a Swiss company. We have a big European, manufacturing base. We have U.S., a lot of colleagues as well that we work with. Sandoz, just broke off from Novartis about a year or so ago. So our biggest CMO at the moment is Novartis. So these are, working with big pharma is a challenge within itself, especially when it's your stepbrother or stepsister, whatever you want to say, or I guess we're the stepchild in this one. So there's a lot of, I'll say, uniqueness, a lot of things that really like learnings about how to understand how this, I'll say, co-relationships works. But we have a global platform, a global partnership, internal, external. And just like a lot of the other big generic companies, our jobs are to get the product in either insourced or outsourced.
Yep. Yeah, I think when it was probably in this same hotel, Logipharma, last year, but I went to one of these pre-sessions like we had yesterday, and I think I heard the word visibility said 46 times in a 3-hour period. So that was one of the key things you touched on. So if you look at what's being historically done with emails and spreadsheets and just back and forth phone calls and trying to get the order status of an order or figure out what's going on, where do you see the largest gaps and problems today in terms of visibility?
I mean, to me, it's really people and management. We become very much rigid in this is how we do it. I'm an old dog here, so when you have your S&OP meeting, what are you doing? You're creating slides and you're creating all that visibility with forecasts and all that, and it's all manually inputted into this, right? Yeah, in most cases. How does that then translate down to your partner? And these types of manual things, when you have a once-a-month touch point, and I'm sure this is not unrealistic, but we have a real situation where we have an increase in forecasts and we want to pull in shipments, and everyone and their mothers involved in trying to make this happen, and we're competing against ourselves because our region is more profitable than your region, and these types of things, and it's all done either outside the S&OP process because it's a one-off, or it's done in a way that is through phone calls or relationships or through spreadsheets. And how many times have you seen a spreadsheet that has V14 or V15? I mean, these things, get very confusing very quickly. And this is a massive opportunity for us to, as leaders and as managers and as industry leaders as well, to try to block that down and really be different. And this is that collaboration partnership of connecting our systems. Like, don't be afraid to be able to see a forecast more than once a month in a spreadsheet, but in a dashboard or something at that point where you could actually then react, our vendor could react to things when they see, or, I don't want to say down the point of sale type stuff, but when you could imagine if I could get a more accurate forecast to give to you, and you could see that on a real time and then react to it through your own capacities and through your own visibility to us, those things are like critical, and we don't do it enough. It's
you mentioned capacity and schedule as one of the big visibility gaps or lack of dialogue and transparency with the CMO. So.
Yeah, I could tell you on the CDMO side, you have your schedule, you have your frozen period. Not everyone understands how that works and why it works, and a lot of times your lead times are, ridiculously long for no reason other than you're not good and you just don't know what to do. All API takes 6 months. That's not true. It's just that's what they say, a year or whatever. But when you start breaking it down and you get smaller and smaller and smaller as a CDMO, especially under private equity, it's about money, right? So I'm going to move this up sooner because it makes more absorption for my site, or I'm going to do this, not even caring that the customer, it's a week, they don't care, worrying about ourselves. So those types of things I think we could be way better at and way more transparent with.
So flipping gears a little bit to the downstream side, once product arrives, we had I can remember several years ago, I hope again he was joking, but we asked SVP of supply chain in Europe, well, how do you know you're out of stock or short? He said, well, we open up the warehouse doors and it's empty. I hope it's better than that. But so what are if you had really consistent visibility, control of everything inbound, does that have some positive outcomes on the commercial side for the commercial teams? Allocation.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's combining multiple things. So you have your supply chain activities, which are based off your demand, and your demand is based from the commercial, inputs, right? So you have that combination. I mean, for me, how do I determine stockouts? Or usually I'll look at rapid response or APO, one of our tools, and we know way ahead of time based off of projections, right? Now the question is when that doesn't happen, and why does that not happen? You have a quality failure, you have a temperature deviation, you have something that's blocked. These types of things, this is when you have a good system in place, these things are very, very visible. Mm-hmm. If I'm waiting to open the door and look in and see I have none, I'm in big trouble, right? So we're a little bit better than that, but we're not perfect by any stretch of the means.
Yeah, from other conversations I've had, even with some of your colleagues, the value, and is Sarang out here? So Sarang spent 8 years at Sandoz.
He's a good guy.
With that. So we've been working on a project together, and I think one of the interesting pieces was, hey, if we have good visibility to what's coming inbound, we're consistent and reliable, then we can better manage allocations on a daily basis, manage back orders, keep an eye out on failure to supply fees and try and minimize those as much as possible. That all stems from that visibility of everything from capacity to forecast, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's, as everyone knows, the planning process and the S&OP process is supposed to really give us that visibility. But what you don't know is, you get a call from the wholesaler, hey, I need you this. Mm-hmm. Or conversely, hey, you lost that. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you have a situation where your supply is either too much or too little. And what happens on day one and day two could be totally, totally different, right? So these are things that I think, having the transparency, and again, I'll also go back to the relationships and partnerships with not just your vendors, but your customers as well. And to understand that, when you get a ROFR or something out there and, something that was treasure becomes trash overnight, and vice versa when you have, a product that you've been lost 2 years ago and you're ready to throw out, all of a sudden there's a market disruption, and these are the types of things that the supply chains, sometimes you get lucky, but that's not a strategy, right? You don't play it on hope, right? So understanding that transparency and having, I could see a much better connection with our customers, understanding, getting sit levels and all that is so tough, and understanding, some of the inputs, and, we lose business, and then 2 days later we'll get a business request mm-hmm. for the same thing to go up, and it's like, what's going on here? So these types of market disruptions that all the generic companies have to deal with, they're intense. I mean, and it happens, and there's a lot of policy issue around it. There's a lot of our system, you could say, is broken or fractured or whatever word you want to use. But how you roll with it, again, I'm going to go back to what you mentioned, the transparency and having a partnership on both sides. So when it goes south or north, you're in a position to really respond.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at Dan to give me a time signal, that's all. Okay. Thanks. So we've, without giving too much away on what you're doing internally, we've started a journey together with some connectivity with one of your larger suppliers. When I understand mm-hmm. orders could perhaps double next year, and I think obviously we couldn't, both organizations couldn't continue to do that on a manual basis with potentially thousands of orders out there. So. Any comment about that? What you know about that?
Yeah, no. That's first of all, it's one of our vendors that we have a very strong relationship, ex-Novartis, and I think that's what plays into this too. This is how it starts, because it starts with trust and understanding the data connections, not just with the ASNs and the invoicing, but sending the forecast as well and understanding that forecast. And then you have, outside your, it's already April, right? Almost May. And we're already providing 26 and 27, take or pay type commitments. So this stuff is super important to make sure that the visibility is aligned. Where there is capacity issues, we now, being very proactive to that. And on both sides, they question us, like, you said this, but I see that. And I love that because that keeps us honest as well, right? So this type of back and forth has been very successful, and it's really helped to streamline us. And again, through our S&OP process, it's much more aligned, and it's not this spreadsheet or that spreadsheet or this, that, and the other. We're not perfect, but we have ways to go. But that mindset is starting to shift a bit. So it's been very, very successful.
Right. Yeah, and I think one of the, again, going back to Sarang's comments on that project team getting it together, one of the, Dan spoke about ASNs downstream, but one of the very valuable transactions is ASNs inbound from the CDMO and the kind of visibility and accuracy that can give you, not just in warehouse receiving, use a 3PL partner, but also, again, to inform the downstream things we spoke about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, my dream would be able to see it both ways.
Yeah.
So when we have a short-term situation and we say we need more product, and it would be fantastic to be able to see their capacity and say, you know what, you guys could do this here. We see it. We're going to make a commitment, and have that level of confidence. Right now, like those things are always kept like under lock and key and can't be shared, or this, and that sort of like lack of trust, I'll call it, is something I would love to get past, be able to see, so we could work with each other and then come to you and say, hey, I see you have open capacity in weeks, whatever, we want to take that. Can you guys help us? Like, instead of just, we need more product here and start fighting over it.
Yeah. So there's a win-win. I mean, digital integration's a two-way street. So
of course.
how do you? It's one of the ways you get them to participate.
Yeah. It's a give and take. Also, like, we can't be selfish about it and say, you give us everything, we're not going to give you anything, right? So, if our vendors understand our inventory levels and our safety stocks, and we change something, it'd be great for them to see that immediately and react. And we've had situations where we change our policy on our policy stock and safety stocks, and our net requirements drop. And what happens? A month later, in S&OP, you'll say, whoa, it was here, it was there. How powerful that would be if that was instant and they could see it and then react to it. And clearly we should have communications before we do something like that, but it doesn't always work that way. Right?
Yeah. No, we definitely try and advocate in our discussions with both sides. We definitely try and advocate that there's, it's not a one-way street. There are certainly values for both parties to participate, and it does take a little, coaxing sometimes to get them on board. But I think, any advice for how to get the CDMOs to participate?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's partnership, it's relationship. I mean, it all comes down to those two things. I mean, if you have a good relationship and a partnership with someone, it shouldn't be an argument. It should be a conversation and a win-win type situation. A lot of times, management gets in the way of that with, again, the policy. We can't do that. Well, why not? I always tell my team, question things. Question. Don't just accept it if it doesn't feel right. And those types of things is how. And the advice I'd give to everybody out there: challenge yourselves and your teams, because you're probably the block and not even realizing, just because of, we've never done that. I mean, we have ASNs with our VMI with our customers, and that's like, oh, you can't do that. Well, why not? We do it all the time with our internal sites, but we have actually customers where we do this with, and it works very well. But a lot of customers don't want to share that information. They don't want us to see what they have. They don't want to see us this, but it's so much easier to just fill them up when they need it, and that level of trust builds a lot of confidence.
Yeah, that's a good point. What are you considering VMI with your third-party manufacturers, that type of approach?
Yeah, I mean, again, these are types of things that will help us, but we don't think about it. We say, well, we can't do that. That's VMI is only internal. Question it, why? It's basic data back and forth, and again, it's a partnership and one of those situations where everyone would benefit from that.
Good. All right, so I think we're probably wrapping up here. So I think maybe if there's a question or two out there, or we can continue. Anyone? Yeah, go ahead. Or just speak up loud so the back of the room can hear.
Yes, well, thank you for your insights, Jeff. My question is kind of a two-part question. First part is, how did the DSCSA implementation efforts affect in a good or in a bad way your relationship with your partners?
I'm not sure how much time we have for that one, but
sorry, and the second one is, now that the implementation took place and you have all this data available, do you think that there's going to be value for your organization to have this data for things like planning or inventory or
Yeah, so the first part is it's been a rocky road for the entire industry, right? We work together, as a generic manufacturer, and in the market, we have no leverage with our customers, as most people would imagine, right? The PBMs and the wholesalers, they tell us, and we have to sort of do. So that mindset has helped and hurt us in a little bit of ways, but we've partnered with 2 very large wholesalers and helped to educate them. We had them come to our facility. They dropped orders down. They watched us load the trucks. They watched us with the data. We saw the ASN sends. We then jumped on a plane to Mississippi and watched them unload it and saw their perspective on it as well and their scannings. And those types of things, we've done that multiple times to sort of understand and share, I'll say, the partnership. And that's been tremendously successful. And it builds trust. And like I saw the Arabindo slide, they're number 2. I think we're number 1. But these are things that the industry does together, and I think it's real helpful. And have we really, we're scratching the surface. We have a lot of returns coming in saying whatever, and then you look at the data and you're like, yeah, no, sorry, we didn't even sell that to you. You got that through a wholesaler, so there's no return credit for that. So there's massive opportunity with this data coming in. We're just scratching the surface of it. Yep, sure.
Are you far enough along in your new process with Novartis that you can start to realize objective KPIs? Because I feel like if you can demonstrate that you have earned that trust and improved your overall performance with Novartis as your primary CMO, it would be compelling to other external manufacturing partners. So I'm just wondering, are you far enough along, or do you have a plan in place to capture KPIs that could help to bring some of those other folks who are reluctant to share, if you will, into the fold?
Yeah, I don't think we have an issue with that. I think Novartis has become our biggest CMO. Before that, we've had many other ones, and as mentioned, we have some projects already ongoing. The trust is there, and the ideas are there, but this is like a continuous learning opportunity, right? So what you learn with one vendor may not work with another, especially with, depending on their, how big you are. You could be a platinum person on theirs. How you rank yourselves to other vendors is important in this game as well. What's big for us might be tiny for them. We have suppliers that we get a lot of stuff on, but we're this much of that, right? And conversely, we're other ones where we have all the leverage over them as well. So to me, it's more of the partnership and that relationship, but that does play into it a bit, and when you're a little fish in the big sea there, it's sometimes hard to, you might pat yourself on the back that you're doing a good job, but reality is that they don't see it that way, and vice versa. Yeah, that's a good question.
So I think to wrap up, and I can probably answer this for you, but I'll ask you, what advice would you give to people in the room that are starting a digitalization journey with a partner? And I think it's partnership, it's trust, it's art of what's possible, it's, consider what can be done. But I think those are all the things you've touched on.
Yeah, I would say have courage, do what's right, think outside the box, don't be limited by we've always done this, or this is how we're set up, or we have to do it this way, or the legal says this. Like those are things that I'd say just challenge, because I always say I'll use Amazon, when I order something on Amazon and I get 3 things and the little battery doesn't show up, that's the cheapest and most insignificant for them, I can't use my stuff. And I always try to convey what I do, in providing access and making sure patients have their medicine to the same thing. Getting it to them is the most important thing, and if any of the tools and connections and all that you can do to get medicines to your patients, you do it, and find a way to do it, and don't accept well, we can't do that, or the management's not ready for it. Keep on challenging.
Good. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.